Sir,
put that down.
Put that back.
We saw you take it.
The words sliced through the low hum of the supermarket like a blade through quiet air. Heads turned. Shopping carts froze mid-aisle.
Wait, I scanned that.
Somewhere in
You
the
didn't steal
distance, an
anything.
automatic door sighed open and shut. Once, twice, before silence swallowed everything.
Now you know who I am.
A single pack of cigarettes dangled between Malcolm Reed's fingers and the metal rack. His eyes lifted slowly toward the voice that had cracked the calm.
He
A
raised
white
the
store
standard.
manager in a stiff blue vest stood 10 feet away, one hand resting on his radio, the other already calling judgment. "We've had people like you before," the manager said, his tone rehearsed, the kind of confidence born not from truth but from habit. Malcolm's reply was measured, a soft echo in a room that had suddenly forgotten how to breathe. "People like me?" The manager's chin lifted. "Yeah, the ones who think walking in means they own the place." Malcolm looked at him for a long second, not angry, just tired. The kind of tired that came from a lifetime of being seen but never recognized. He placed the cigarettes gently on the counter beside a register, the motion deliberate, respectful, almost ceremonial. Behind him, a young cashier whispered to a coworker. He looked suspicious. The other girl shrugged, nervous. "Security's on the way." A child tugged at her mother's sleeve. "Mom, why are they yelling at him?" The mother didn't answer. She just pushed the cart forward, pretending not to see. The radio crackled. "Possible theft, aisle 4. Every syllable felt like a verdict. Malcolm's voice stayed calm. "Do you even know who owns this place?" The manager laughed once, sharp and empty. "You, please. Just wait till security comes." Before the tension could stretch further, a deep, steady voiceover broke the scene. The sound of the narrator, reaching out beyond the story. "Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in dignity and justice, hit like and subscribe. These stories spark change, and we're glad you're here." Now back to Malcolm. When the voice faded, the fluorescent lights buzzed louder, like static filling the silence between stares. Malcolm didn't move. He didn't need to. Security boots echoed from the back of the store, growing closer. The manager folded his arms. "See? We don't play games here." Malcolm tilted his head slightly. "Neither do I." The cashier snickered under her breath. "He's trying to act calm." The manager said louder. "That's how they do it. Quiet, polite, and stealing all the same." The word they hung in the air like smoke. A customer coughed, embarrassed for him. Malcolm's eyes narrowed, not in fury but in focus. "You just said that out loud." The manager didn't flinch. "I said what everyone's thinking." At that moment, the loudspeaker hummed. A store jingle, cheerful, oblivious. The clash between the music and the moment was deafening. Malcolm's voice dropped, low enough for only those closest to hear. "You just called the wrong man a thief." The line hit like a quiet gunshot. Aisle 4 stood still. No one spoke. The camera of someone's phone blinked red from the corner, recording what would soon flood the internet. Malcolm placed both hands on the counter, calm and steady, as if anchoring himself to the ground he already owned. Then with a faint half-smile, not of arrogance but certainty, he said, "Let them come." The hum of the lights grew louder, fade out on his face, and composed, powerful, misunderstood, as the words Black CEO Series appear across the screen. Before the store lights, before the suspicion, there was calm. ceonetwork, Los Angeles. A quiet skyline still soft with morning haze. Malcolm Reed buttoned the cuff of his gray shirt, not the tailored one he wore for board meetings, but the plain cotton one that no one would notice. No driver today, no assistant, no polished shoes. Just him, a coffee, and a purpose. For 10 years he had built Reed Mart from the ground up. One neighborhood, one shelf, one paycheck at a time. And yet, even as his name glowed across 300 storefronts, he knew there were still rooms where his skin tone came before his title. Today, he wanted to see those rooms. He parked his old black sedan at the edge of the lot, a car so ordinary no one would think twice. As he stepped out, the automatic glass doors of his own supermarket opened for him, not because they knew him, but because they opened for everyone. Inside, the air smelled of citrus cleaner and fresh bread. The floors gleamed. The overhead speakers hummed a soft Motown tune, one of those songs that made everything feel simple for 3 minutes. He walked past rows of cereal boxes and produce stacked in geometric perfection. Every label, every font, every shelf placement, and all his design. He smiled slightly. We did good, he thought. Not proud, just grateful. But even gratitude had a short shelf life here. Near the self-checkout lane, a young employee laughed too loud, scrolling on her phone. Two managers argued quietly about schedule cuts. A customer was being ignored at the service counter. The Community First slogan above their heads felt more like wallpaper than promise. Malcolm took a small notebook from his jacket pocket. He jotted down 3 words. Culture needs cleaning. He wasn't there to intimidate anyone. He was there to listen, to the tone behind greetings, to the pauses before smiles. He believed you could measure respect not by sales but by silence. That's when he stopped by aisle 4. Cigarettes, magazines, bottled water, the small corner where people lingered too long, where suspicion liked to live. He reached for a pack out of habit, then hesitated. His father had quit 20 years ago. Malcolm hadn't touched one since. Still, he picked it up, reading the label like an artifact from another life. A voice behind him said, "Can I help you with something?" Polite, flat, mechanical, he turned. A cashier stared at him like he'd wandered into a restricted area. "Just looking," he said, placing the pack back on the rack. She didn't smile. "Well, make sure you pay for whatever you take." Her tone wasn't loud, but it was sharp enough for the man behind her, the manager, to look up from his tablet. Their eyes met. Something wordless passed between them, something Malcolm had known since he was 12, the quiet calculation of worth. He nodded politely, took a step toward the front counter, but the manager was already walking his way, radio in hand. "Everything okay, sir?" The question wasn't about service. It was about suspicion. Malcolm's lips pressed into a calm line. "I believe so." The manager didn't leave. He lingered, watching. That's how it always started, not with shouting, but with checking. Checking receipts, checking bags, checking belonging. Malcolm looked around once more, at the posters showing smiling, diverse families, at the slogan, "Everyone welcome," and quietly, almost to himself, he said, "Let's see if that's true." He straightened his shoulders and reached for the cigarettes again, not because he needed them, but because the story needed to show itself. Somewhere behind him, the radio clicked alive, security to aisle 4, and that was the exact second the calm burned away. The echo of security to aisle 4 rolled across the supermarket like thunder wrapped in fluorescent light. Heads lifted. Conversations froze. Somewhere, a can rolled off a shelf and clattered to the floor. A perfect accidental soundtrack for what was about to unfold. Malcolm stood still. His hand rested lightly on the handle of his cart. A single cup of coffee, a newspaper, and a quiet morning now turning into a performance he didn't audition for. 2 guards emerged from the back office, their navy jackets crisp, radios hissing. One was tall, one was new. Both carried the kind of posture that mistook confidence for authority. The manager pointed. "That's him." Aisle 4. Possible theft. Malcolm turned toward them, calm but alert. "You're here fast." "Company policy," said the taller guard. "We respond immediately." "To what?" The cashier from earlier stepped forward, her voice shaky but eager to please her boss. He was handling cigarettes. "Never scanned them." "Looked around before putting them down." Malcolm blinked slowly. "Looked around?" "You seemed nervous," she added, like she was adding a color to an unfinished painting. He wanted to laugh. Instead, he breathed. "You mean I hesitated? That's different from nervous." The shorter guard lifted his hand. "Sir, let's not make this harder than it needs to be." "Can you empty your pockets?" Malcolm raised an eyebrow. "Right here? In front of everyone?" "Yes, sir. It's for your own good." There it was, the line that always came before humiliation. He'd heard it in airports, hotels, boardrooms. "It's for your own good." He slipped his hands into his pockets and pulled out his keys, his wallet, his receipt, the thin strip of paper trembling slightly in the stale air. "Coffee, newspaper, no cigarettes," he said evenly. The manager frowned. "Maybe you already ditched them." That word ditched landed heavy, loud enough for nearby customers to pause their shopping. A woman whispered, "Is he stealing?" Another muttered, "Probably." Phones began to rise like periscopes in a sea of curiosity. Tina Lopez, the junior clerk stacking cereal on the next aisle, froze mid-motion. Her gut twisted. She'd seen this before, different faces, same setup. She dropped her box cutter and walked over, cautious but determined. "Manager, I saw him put the pack back," she said, voice steady. The manager turned, irritation sharpening his features. "Lopez, this isn't your business." "It is," she said quietly, "if it's wrong." He ignored her and motioned to the guards. "Proceed." The taller guard moved closer, hand hovering near Malcolm's arm but not touching yet. Malcolm spoke softly. "You're about to make a mistake you can't take back." The guard hesitated. "Sir, please." "Check the footage," Tina interrupted. "He didn't steal anything," the cashier scoffed. "Stay in your lane, Tina," but the young clerk didn't back down. "My lane is honesty." The crowd shifted, murmuring now. One man whispered, "She's right." Another said, "Just check the cameras." The manager's patience cracked. "Everyone calm down. We handle this in store." Malcolm looked around, at the staring faces, the half-raised phones, the fluorescent ceiling flickering above them. He could feel the old ache in his chest, that mixture of anger and restraint that every black professional learns to balance like a blade on the tongue. He said quietly, "If you're going to search me, do it now. But understand, when this is over, I won't be the one explaining myself." The taller guard hesitated again. The manager barked, "Follow procedure." And in that instant, and before anyone moved, the sound of a phone camera clicked. A small red light glowed. Someone was filming. The scene froze in time. A human being mistaken for a headline, surrounded by aisles of bright packaging and moral darkness. Malcolm's gaze lifted toward the lens. Calm, composed. A silent warning forming behind his eyes. They thought this was about cigarettes. They had no idea it was about character. The store had gone too still. Not the calm kind, the brittle kind, the kind that cracks the moment someone breathes too loud. Malcolm didn't move. He could feel eyes measuring him like price tags. He could hear the air conditioning hum as if it was watching too. The taller guard broke first. "Sir, we're just doing our job." Malcolm looked at him, steady. "And I'm doing mine." The guard frowned. "What job's that?" Staying calm. The line hit harder than any argument. Even Tina paused mid-sentence. The young cashier rolled her eyes. The manager crossed his arms, mistaking stillness for surrender. "You can make this easy, Mr." He squinted at the receipt. "Whoever you are." Malcolm met his gaze without blinking. "You don't need my name to respect me." That silence afterward wasn't passive. It was strategy. He let it stretch, let the quiet work on them the way pressure works on glass. He'd learned long ago that silence had weight, the kind that could tilt a room. The manager laughed nervously. "Look, man, you can't expect us to ignore suspicious behavior." Malcolm said nothing. "You're not talking now." Still nothing. The manager smirked. "See? Guilty people go quiet," Tina whispered. "Or smart people stop wasting words." Her courage startled the cashier, who muttered, "Mind your own lane." But Malcolm's silence wasn't submission. It was containment. Every second he stayed composed, their nerves cracked a little more. He adjusted his jacket sleeve. Simple movement, precise. The guards exchanged glances, not fear but uncertainty. Then came the sound. The familiar rhythm of phone notifications. The first video had gone live. Someone had captioned it. "Guy accused of stealing cigarettes for no reason." The crowd was growing braver now, murmuring louder. "Man, just let him go." "He didn't take anything." "This is embarrassing, dude." The manager stiffened. Everyone mind your business, but the store no longer belonged to him. It belonged to whoever held the truth. Malcolm turned slightly toward the onlookers, his expression calm enough to look cinematic. His inner voice, the one he never spoke aloud, down whispered to himself, "They've already lost the moment they tried to define me." The guard shifted his weight. "Sir, please say something." Malcolm exhaled slowly. "You want words? Fine." He leaned forward just enough to make them listen. "You've built an entire policy on suspicion, and now you're shocked when it turns on the wrong person." No one replied. He straightened again, voice level. "Do what you need to. Call whoever you want. But remember, silence is still being recorded." The words landed like a hammer wrapped in velvet. The manager looked at the security camera, then back at Malcolm, uneasy. "You're making this worse for yourself." Malcolm smiled faintly. "No, I'm letting you." That was the turning point, invisible, quiet, but real. The balance of power had shifted and they didn't even know it yet. Behind them, Tina whispered to a customer, "He's not scared. He's waiting," and that was true. Malcolm had learned that sometimes the most powerful sound in a room full of noise was none at all. He stood there unmoving, not cornered, not broken, just patient. And while they filled the air with orders, whispers, and excuses, he was already rewriting the ending in his head. Tina Lopez wasn't supposed to get involved. She'd only been at Reedmart for 7 months, a part-time job to help her pay for night classes in sociology. The training manual said, customer disputes must be handled by management. But the manual had never covered what to do when management was the problem. She stood between aisles 4 and 5, holding her phone low against her apron. The record button glowed red. The video caught everything, the posture, the tone, the distance between words. The kind of details that didn't show up in reports but lived forever on screens. The manager's voice carried over the speakers. "Security," I said, "detain him." "He's refusing to cooperate." Malcolm didn't flinch. He just adjusted his sleeves again, calm as stone. Tina whispered almost to herself, "He's not refusing. He's enduring." A woman beside her, middle-aged with a grocery basket, frowned. "What do you mean?" Tina hesitated, then said softly, "Watch how quiet he is. That's not fear. That's control." The woman blinked.
"You know him?"
Tina shook her head. "Not yet." The taller guard looked uneasy now. "Manager, maybe we should check the camera footage." The manager spun on him. "You questioning me too?" "I'm saying we confirm before what? Before he runs? You think I don't know how this works?" The guard's jaw tightened. "With all due respect, sir, we're not supposed to assume intent." "Intent?" The manager snapped. He was loitering by the cigarette rack. "You think that's innocent?" A low murmur rippled through the onlookers. That's when Tina stepped forward. Her voice was small but clear. "I saw him put the pack back." Every head turned. The manager squinted. "Excuse me?" "He didn't take anything," she said again, firmer. He looked at it, read the label, and set it down. "I was stocking cereal 2 aisles over." The cashier rolled her eyes. "You can't even see aisle 4 from there." "Yes, I can," Tina said. "And I can hear everything, too." The room tensed. It wasn't just about theft anymore, it was about truth. The manager laughed coldly. "Lopez, you're barely out of training. Stay in your lane." She swallowed, then looked at Malcolm. He gave her a single nod, small, steady, like passing a baton in silence. Tina turned back. "My lane is decency." Phones lifted higher now. Someone whispered, "She's standing up for him." A customer started recording from the front counter. "Name's Tina Lopez," he muttered for the video. "Remember it." The manager's face flushed red. "Enough. Put your phone away before I write you up." Tina's fingers didn't move. "Go ahead." For the first time the crowd clapped, not loud but enough to echo. The kind of applause people give when they recognize courage. Malcolm finally spoke, his tone low but resonant. "It only takes one honest voice to turn a room." The manager scoffed. "Save the speeches." But the silence that followed wasn't on his side anymore. Even the guards looked uneasy now, glancing at one another. The taller one muttered, "He's right. We should check the footage." The manager hissed through his teeth. "Do it later." Malcolm met his gaze. "No, do it now." The words weren't loud, they didn't have to be. They carried the calm certainty of command. And for the first time since the confrontation began, the hierarchy in the room shifted. Phones were rolling, witnesses whispering. Truth recording itself in real time. Tina felt her pulse steady. She had no idea who this man really was, but she knew one thing for certain. He wasn't the one on trial anymore. The store had reached a pressure point. Too many eyes. Too much silence. Too many people pretending not to take sides while recording every second. The manager's jaw tightened. He snatched the cigarette pack from the shelf and waved it like evidence. "Cameras show him touching this. He never scanned it." "That's theft, plain and simple." Malcolm didn't react. His stillness was unnerving, like a storm that refused to make noise. He spoke evenly. "So touching is stealing now?" The manager smirked. "You people always find excuses." The air cracked. The phrase hung there, heavy, poisonous. A few customers gasped. One woman muttered, "Did he just say that out loud?" Tina's eyes widened. "Sir, please, don't sir me," the manager snapped. He's not special. He's just another problem in a hoodie. The tall security guard shifted uncomfortably. Mark, maybe tone it down. Tone what down? Mark barked. You see him playing the victim? Malcolm's voice quiet but clear. Repeat that. What? The last part. Mark hesitated, pride battling reason. You heard me. Malcolm tilted his head, studying him. Not the kind of look that invited a fight, but the kind that measured consequence. Good, Malcolm said softly. Because now you'll remember exactly what cost you your job. Laughter flickered from somewhere in the back, nervous, misplaced. But nobody joined in. Phones lifted higher. One customer whispered, he said he's losing his job? Tina's breath caught. He knows something. The shorter guard tried to intervene. Let's all calm down. Malcolm turned to him. I am calm. The guard nodded quickly. Yes, sir, I can see that. Can you? Malcolm asked, voice even. Because they can't. He turned back to the manager. You're so used to disrespecting people who look like me. You mistake peace for guilt, the crowd murmured. The woman near the produce section said under her breath, he's right. Mark, red-faced now, jabbed a finger toward Malcolm. You think your fancy talk changes anything? I run this store, Tina said, not for long. He spun on her. You're done here, Lopez. No, she said, trembling but loud. You are. Her words snapped through the aisle like a spark through dry wire. Mark's radio crackled again. Unit 2, confirm status aisle 4. But he ignored it. His focus was on regaining power, on reasserting control he no longer had. He stepped closer to Malcolm. You want to keep acting tough, go ahead. We'll let the cops decide. Malcolm didn't move. Call them. You sure? Yes, Malcolm said. They'll need to know who they're arresting. Mark laughed, but the sound didn't land. Even his own staff looked uneasy. The tall guard whispered something into his radio, eyes darting toward the camera overhead. Malcolm lowered his tone, quiet but cutting. 9 minutes, Mark blinked. What? In 9 minutes, Malcolm said, this scene ends, not for me, but for you. The guard frowned. Sir, what's that supposed to mean? It means, Malcolm said, the truth doesn't need permission to show up. He took a small step forward, calm, deliberate. Not a threat. Just gravity. The phones in the crowd moved closer. The internet was already watching, though none of them knew yet what kind of man they were filming. Tina whispered, Oh my God. Mark's confidence faltered. You threatening me? No, Malcolm said simply. I'm reminding you, Mark sneered, desperate now. Reminding me of what? Malcolm's gaze didn't waver. Of who you're speaking to. And for the first time, the manager hesitated. Not because he believed him, but because some part of him, deep down, was afraid he might be right. The aisle felt smaller now, as if the walls themselves were closing in. Every fluorescent light seemed sharper, every breath louder. The moment had crossed the line between accusation and spectacle. The store manager, Mark, realized too late that he'd lost control. Not of Malcolm, but of the room. Still, pride has a way of walking even when logic wants to sit down. He barked toward the guards, desperate for command. Detain him now. The taller guard hesitated. For what offense? Mark snapped. For theft. For defiance. He ran out of words. The shorter guard sighed, stepping closer anyway. Sir, we're going to have to escort you to the back. Malcolm didn't flinch. On what grounds? Mark slammed his palm against the counter. Store policy. Thieves don't get to negotiate. The sound echoed like a gavel in an unjust court. Somewhere near the bakery section, a child whimpered. His mother whispered, Don't look, baby. Malcolm's voice cut through the stillness, calm, precise. Then show me the policy that lets you insult and detain paying customers without evidence. No answer. Just eyes avoiding his. A teenager in a green jacket whispered to his phone camera. This dude's not even mad. He's too calm. This feels bad. The crowd had grown. Maybe 20 people now, half pretending to browse, half openly filming. Mark gestured to the guards again. You heard me. Take him. The tall guard took a reluctant step forward. Sir, please. Malcolm didn't move, didn't blink. Touch me, he said quietly, and you'll regret it before your next paycheck clears. The guard froze. He didn't know why those words landed heavier than a threat. Maybe because they sounded like fact, not fiction. Mark laughed nervously. You threatening my staff now? No, Malcolm said. I'm promising accountability. Tina's phone trembled in her hands. She whispered to the woman beside her. He's not just a customer. Something's different. The woman nodded slowly. Yeah. Look at how the guards listen to him. Mark paced, his authority unraveling with every second of silence. He turned on Tina. You're still filming? Hand it over. She held her ground. No. You're violating store policy. No, she said. I'm protecting someone from it. A man near the dairy section chuckled. Damn, she said that. The crowd murmured again, louder this time, braver. Mark's face flushed crimson. You all think this is funny? He shouted. He's lying to you. He's not. He stopped mid-sentence, realizing he didn't even know what to accuse anymore. Malcolm's calm voice filled the space his anger left empty. You've raised your voice. Called for backup, insulted me, and still haven't asked the simplest question, why I'm here. Mark stared. Why are you here? Malcolm smiled faintly. To see how my stores treat customers. The sentence confused him. The words my stores didn't register yet, not fully. He scoffed. Your stores? Right, maybe you also own the moon. Malcolm said nothing. He didn't need to. The silence hit harder than proof. Mark tried to laugh it off. You think this is some movie? You can't just walk in here acting like a CEO. Someone from the crowd muttered, maybe he can. The guards looked at each other, unsure, uneasy. Tina finally spoke up, her voice stronger than before. Sir, she said to Mark, I think you should stop talking. He spun on her. Excuse me? Because the internet's already listening. He turned and saw at least 6 phones pointed at him, lights blinking red. For the first time, Mark's face drained of color. Malcolm's eyes met his. Calm, cold, certain. You've spent the last 10 minutes trying to humiliate me, Malcolm said softly. But you're the only one exposing yourself. The crowd's whisper turned into silence, the heavy kind that announces the storm before the break. And this time, it wasn't Malcolm standing trial. It was Mark. The store's speakers hissed softly, a low electric buzz that filled every gap of silence. Mark stood behind the counter, his face red and jaw locked, trying to reclaim a voice that no longer belonged to him. He jabbed a finger toward Malcolm. Enough of this. You're done. You don't walk into my store and talk like you run it. Malcolm tilted his head slightly. Your store? Mark smirked, sensing victory. Yes, my store. I manage this location. I decide who stays, who leaves. Malcolm studied him for a moment, then reached into his jacket pocket. A few people gasped, the kind of collective breath that comes from a crowd primed for the wrong kind of ending. But all he pulled out was his phone. He pressed a single contact. Elliot, he said, calm, controlled. The voice that answered came through sharp, professional, almost mechanical. Yes, Mr. Reed? The crowd stilled. The name dropped like a pin in a cathedral. Mark frowned. Who? Malcolm didn't answer him. Activate Protocol 4, he said. Store number 217. Immediate verification. Confirmed, Elliot replied. Compliance and legal are online. Live feed in 60 seconds. The call ended. Every register screen flickered, first static, then blue. The familiar company logo appeared, Reedmart Holdings, Inc. An alert banner ran beneath it. System override. Corporate admin access enabled. The air changed. Phones tilted upward to capture the moment. The guards froze. Tina's eyes widened. Mark stammered. What did you do? Malcolm's voice carried through the store. Soft but resonant. You just tried to throw out the man who built this place. The crowd reacted before Mark did. A ripple of disbelief, then whispers, then realization spreading like fire through dry grass. Tina mouthed, He owns it? Malcolm turned his phone toward the nearest register. Full identity display, he said. The screen blinked again, now showing a live corporate directory. CEO Malcolm Reed. Founder and majority owner Mark stumbled backward. That can't be real. It's very real, Malcolm said quietly. So is your voice recorded across every device in this room. One of the guards lowered his head. Sir, I'm so sorry. I didn't know. Malcolm nodded once. I know you didn't. He turned back to Mark. But he did. Mark's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Tina finally exhaled. Oh my God, she whispered. He really does own it, the crowd murmured, half in awe, half in shame for having believed the worst. Malcolm continued, his tone even not angry, just inevitable. You see, I come to my stores unannounced. I watch how people are treated when they don't look like power. And today you showed me exactly why this system needs to change. Mark tried to recover. Wait, Mr. Reed, I didn't mean... Malcolm cut him off with a look. You meant every word. You just didn't expect to be held accountable for it. He lifted his phone again. Elliot, initiate HR action for this location. Elliot's voice returned, efficient. Understood. Do you wish to suspend current management? Mark's panic cracked through his arrogance. Wait, let's talk about this. Malcolm's reply came cold, deliberate. I don't talk. I act, a beat passed. The store lights flickered once more. Every employee access badge in the system pinged. On Mark's radio, a robotic voice spoke. Manager ID 4721 access suspended. The crowd gasped. The cashier's register shut down mid-transaction. Malcolm didn't smile. He just said, You wanted control. Now you're out of it. Phones recorded, customers clapped softly, not mockery, but release. Justice quiet and complete unfolding right before them. Tina's voice broke the hush. Mr. Reed, what happens now? Malcolm turned to her. Now, he said. Now they learn what dignity looks like when it walks back in the door. The name Malcolm Reed hovered on every glowing screen like a verdict the building itself had spoken. The logo of Reed Mart Holdings, Inc. pulsed faintly, blue against the sterile light. And for the first time since this began, no one said a word. Mark stood frozen, mouth half open, disbelief painted across his face. I don't understand, he stammered. You can't just walk in here and... Malcolm cut him off, his voice even, quiet, surgical. You accused the owner of theft, in his own store. The silence that followed had weight. The crowd didn't breathe. The truth had finally stepped into the light, and it was wearing calm like armor. Tina swallowed hard. He's really the CEO? She whispered to no one in particular. The tall guard nodded, pale. It's true. I just got the alert on my tablet. Corporate verified his access. Mark shook his head, searching for footing that no longer existed. You could have said something sooner. Malcolm's gaze didn't waver. I didn't need to. He took a small step forward, every movement measured, precise. You see, I wanted to see how far you'd go when you thought you had power. Mark tried to speak but failed. His face was red, his hands trembling. It's a misunderstanding. No, Malcolm said softly. It's a revelation. He turned slightly toward the cameras, and not for vanity but for record. This is what prejudice looks like when it meets truth. It's not always loud. Sometimes it just holds a badge and calls itself policy. A customer near the dairy aisle clapped once, unsure if it was allowed. Then another joined. Then the rest. The applause wasn't celebratory. It was cleansing, like exhaling after holding your breath for too long. Tina's voice cracked. Sir, I'm sorry this happened. Malcolm looked at her kindly. Don't be. You did what most people won't. You spoke up before it was safe to. He turned back to Mark. You said this was your store. You were half right. It was, until about 60 seconds ago. Mark blinked, confused. What do you mean, was? Malcolm tapped his phone again. Elliot, confirm transition. A pause. Then Elliot's voice, firm, professional. Confirmed. Manager access revoked. Interim oversight transferred to employee Lopez per CEO authorization. Mark's radio beeped and his badge light turned red. Locked out, the sound hit like thunder. He stared down at it as if it had betrayed him. You can't just... Malcolm stopped him with a gesture. I can, and I did. The cashier, pale and quiet until now, whispered, He really owns the whole company? Tina nodded, still stunned. Yeah, and we just tried to throw him out. Malcolm looked around the room. At the employees, the customers, the phone still recording. Remember this moment, he said, voice low but resonant. Because justice doesn't always show up in uniforms. Sometimes it walks in wearing jeans and silence. The crowd went still again. Mark's voice trembled. What happens to me now? Malcolm's expression didn't change. You'll find out at the next staff meeting, though I doubt you'll be invited. A nervous laugh rolled through the crowd, soft but certain. Malcolm turned to Tina once more. You said the culture needed fixing. You were right. Starting today, you'll help rebuild it, she blinked. Me? Yes, honesty deserves a title. The screens dimmed, leaving the words system override complete glowing faintly before fading out. Malcolm took one final look at Mark, not with anger, but with the quiet finality of someone who didn't need to gloat. "You thought power was about control," he said. "It's not. It's about choice. And you just lost yours." The last word hung in the air as the store fell utterly silent, humbled, corrected, awake. For a long moment, no one moved. The supermarket was still. Only the faint buzz of the overhead lights dared to exist. Then slowly the rhythm of the place began to breathe again. Bags rustled. Someone coughed. A receipt printer clicked and jammed like the world was trying to pretend it hadn't just witnessed itself change. Mark was shaking. His badge light blinked red, a heartbeat of failure pulsing from his chest. "This isn't fair," he muttered. You can't just humiliate me like this in front of everyone." Malcolm's voice stayed low. "Fair? You called the police on an innocent man. You paraded judgment through a public place. That was humiliation. He gestured calmly toward the screen still showing access revoked, is consequence." Mark's lips quivered. "I was doing my job." "No," Malcolm said. "You were doing your fear." The words hit harder than anger ever could. Elliot's voice returned through the phone speaker. "Sir, corporate HR and legal are online. Do you want to proceed with disciplinary protocol?" Malcolm didn't hesitate. "Yes, effective immediately, manager ID 4721 suspended. Begin full workplace audit." Tina gasped quietly, then covered her mouth. She'd never seen power move that swiftly, that silently. Mark stumbled back, trying to salvage a shred of control. "Wait, I've got seniority." "You can't." Malcolm looked at him the way a storm looks at a match. "Seniority doesn't outrank decency." The tall guard stepped forward. "Mr. Reed, sir, what do you want us to do?" Malcolm turned toward him, his calm steady. "Escort him out." "With respect. We're not here to repeat his mistakes." The guard nodded and placed a gentle hand on Mark's shoulder. Mark jerked away at first, pride resisting gravity, but eventually his shoulders sagged. The sound of his footsteps, slow, defeated, echoed all the way to the exit. No one clapped. No one laughed. It wasn't that kind of justice. It was quieter, heavier, like a room exhaling after too many years of holding its breath. Tina turned to Malcolm, voice trembling. "You didn't yell. You didn't threaten. You just fixed it." Malcolm smiled faintly. "Justice doesn't always need volume. Just clarity." He looked around the store. Every screen had gone back to normal now. Prices, promotions, loyalty points. But no one was thinking about discounts anymore. The cashier who had accused him earlier whispered, "I'm sorry." Malcolm nodded. "Then don't waste it, learn." He started walking toward the front entrance. Every step sounded deliberate, echoing against the tile floor. As he passed the coffee station, he stopped. The same cup he'd bought earlier sat there, now cold. He picked it up, still half full, and sipped. Tina followed him a few steps. "Sir, if you don't mind me asking, why do you do it this way? Coming in like a regular customer, no announcement, no team." Malcolm turned, his eyes steady but kind. "Because truth hides when it sees cameras coming. I wanted to meet it raw." He looked back toward the checkout lines. And I did. Outside, the parking lot glowed under harsh California sun. Mark was standing there, head down, security at his side, waiting for someone to tell him where to go next. Malcolm paused at the doors. "Elliot," he said into his phone. "Make sure he gets his severance." "He's wrong, not worthless." "Yes, sir." The doors slid open with a soft hiss. For a moment, the entire store watched the back of the man they had just misjudged. His calm posture, his unhurried walk. The quiet gravity that comes only from those who don't need to prove anything anymore. And when he crossed the threshold, the silence broke, not with applause, but with the sound of someone whispering, "That's what dignity looks like." Outside, the air was bright and too clean, like the world had been freshly washed after a storm. Mark stood near the curb, security guards flanking him, not gripping his arms, just standing as witnesses to the end of his illusion. He was no longer the man in charge. He was a man unmasked. The sliding doors whispered open and Malcolm stepped out. He carried nothing but his phone, his receipt, and that calm that unnerved even the sky. The police cruiser rolled up just as he reached the edge of the parking lot. Two officers stepped out, their hands hovering near their belts, reading the tension wrong like everyone else had. "Sir," one officer said to Malcolm, "we got a report of attempted theft. Mind telling us what's going on?" Malcolm held up his ID badge, the silver letters catching sunlight. CEO, Reedmart Holdings Inc. The taller officer blinked, lowering his hand instantly. Oh, understood, sir. We didn't realize. Malcolm's tone was polite but heavy with precision. I imagine not. Happens a lot when people look but don't see. The second officer glanced toward Mark, then back at Malcolm. Everything okay here, Mr. Reed? Malcolm nodded. Handled internally. Mark looked up, face pale, voice thin. Mr. Reed, I didn't mean to. Malcolm stopped him gently with a raised hand. Stop apologizing for what you meant. Start understanding why you meant it. The officers exchanged glances. Even they seemed unsure whether to leave or salute. Finally, the taller one said, Understood, sir. We'll clear the call. They got back in the cruiser and drove off, red and blue lights fading to gray in the morning haze. Mark turned back to Malcolm. Please don't ruin me over this. I have a family. Malcolm's expression softened just slightly. Then teach them better than you taught yourself. He gestured to the guard beside Mark. Walk him to his car. Let him leave in dignity. That's more grace than he offered anyone today. The guards nodded. As Mark walked away, Tina stepped outside, clutching her phone. She looked both proud and shaken. Sir, the video's everywhere. It's already hit 200,000 views. Malcolm glanced at her, unbothered. Good. Maybe people will see what patience looks like when it refuses to kneel. A soft breeze stirred. A piece of the store's receipt fluttered out of his hand, landing by Tina's feet. She bent to pick it up, the total, $417. She smiled. You didn't even buy much. I bought time, Malcolm said, half smiling. And truth. Turns out they were both on sale today. She laughed through her nerves. You really don't get angry, do you? Malcolm looked back at the building. Through the glass, customers were still inside, talking, filming, processing what they'd seen. Anger burns minutes, he said quietly. Composure changes years. His phone buzzed again. Elliot's voice came through crisp. Sir, corporate PR has flagged the trending video. Do you want us to take it down? Malcolm shook his head. No, leave it up. Let them see what leadership looks like when it's tested in public. Yes, sir. He ended the call and turned toward Tina. You still working your way through college? Yes, sir. Sociology major. Good, he said. Keep studying people. They're the hardest part of any business. She nodded, eyes shining. Thank you for everything. Malcolm looked past her, toward the horizon where the light was finally soft again. Don't thank me, he said. Thank the truth for showing up on time. Behind them, the automatic doors closed, sealing the chapter. Inside, the store was already adjusting to its new tone. Quieter, humbler, better. Justice had been served, not shouted. Not forced, but delivered like a calm correction from someone who no longer needed to prove he was right. The sun was sliding west, draping the parking lot in sheets of gold. The chaos had burned out, leaving behind a strange, sacred quiet, the kind that follows storms and truth alike. Malcolm stood beside his car, door open but not yet entering, as if the day hadn't fully released him. Inside the store, the hum of commerce had returned, but softer now, cautious. Every thank you, every have a good day, carried a little more awareness than it had that morning. Tina lingered near the doorway, watching him. For a second, she wasn't an employee anymore. She was a witness to something that didn't fit inside a news clip or a viral hashtag. Malcolm glanced back through the glass. The shelves looked the same, but the energy didn't. It never does after the mask of normal breaks. He exhaled slowly, almost smiling. 9 minutes. That was all it took. He looked at Tina. You know why I like to visit unannounced? She shook her head. Because power means nothing if it can't walk through its own doors unnoticed. If respect only exists when titles do, then it isn't respect and it's theater. Tina nodded, memorizing every word. Malcolm continued, his voice soft, almost reflective. People think justice is about punishment. It's not. It's about clarity, showing the mirror to the world and making it look long enough to recognize its reflection. He turned, leaning against his car. What you did today mattered, Tina. You spoke when silence was easier. That's leadership, not rank, not paycheck. She smiled shyly. I just didn't want to watch something wrong and say nothing. He looked at her, warmth flickering behind his calm. Then you're already better than most managers I've met. For a moment, they just stood there, the young woman who found her voice, and the man who reminded everyone how quiet strength sounds. Malcolm finally opened the car door. The wind caught the edges of his coat, carrying the faint smell of coffee and asphalt. He paused, glancing back one last time. The reflection in the glass showed his own store, the one that had judged him, doubted him, learned from him, all in less than 10 minutes. He smiled to himself. Not proud, just peaceful. They said I didn't belong, he murmured. Now they work in the company I built. The line wasn't for the cameras. It wasn't even for Tina. It was for the quiet world that still pretended not to notice until it had to. He slid into the driver's seat, the leather creaking softly. For a moment, the camera lingered on his hands, steady, deliberate, as he started the engine. Inside the store, the new manager, interim lead Tina Lopez, walked to the front counter, her reflection merging with his through the glass, one chapter closing as another began. The narrator's voice returned, low, cinematic, like a heartbeat finding rhythm again. In every city, on every corner, someone is misjudged before they're met. But every so often the story rewrites itself, not with rage but with grace. And when it does, the world remembers that justice doesn't need noise. It just needs truth and someone strong enough to carry it.